Hello from your favorite Grasslands PR team. This week we're back with another reason why these overlooked and underappreciated ecosystems are objectively the best biome. I'm Nicole.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Allan.
Hi, Allan.
Oh, this is the first time that I've done the talking part of the episode. So, yes. Well, Rachel and Nicole have invited me to talk to you today, dear listener, about something that's very near and dear to my heart.
Well, we didn't invite you to speak about something in particular because we don't know what it is yet.
Right. Well, that's true, because you don't know. You don't know what I'm about to talk about, but I will tell you that this episode did begin with one of you personally insulting me.
Oh,
What?
That's
Yes.
exciting. Which one?
Yes. Well, which of you do you think did it?
Probably me.
It
Unclear.
was.
It could be either of us.
It was Nicole.
That makes
Okay.
sense. Okay.
Fantastic.
It was indeed Nicole. Do you have any idea what you said to me that was a personal affront to my values?
This feels like a trap. That anything under 200 grams doesn't matter.
No. The opposite. Over.
Yeah.
You know what? While that's a very weird take that you have, that animals larger than 200 grams aren't important. No, that's not what this is about.
Okay.
We'll talk about that another time. This happened last year, a few months ago.
Oh my
wow.
god.
He's been holding
okay.
on
A few
to this
months
for a
ago.
long
Never
time.
mind.
We were
okay.
we were sitting at a table. I was describing to you an experience that I'd had in an aquarium where I feel like I really connected with a pygmy marmoset.
Oh.
And then you
no.
said primates are terrible.
Awful. Yeah.
Yes. I then sent you a video later of a pygmy marmoset, adorable, small enough to grasp onto a plasticware knife.
Yeah.
You responded with one word:
Hideous.
hideous.
I remember.
Oh, no.
All right, so in light of that, I realized that the best biome hasn't really had any episodes that talk about primates yet.
That's true.
It's for a reason.
Yeah, I'm noticing
no,
that.
it's not.
They may be Nicole's least favorite taxa, but you know what? They're fascinating, and they merit some discussion, especially in the context of the best biome. Because I know you probably think of we obviously very strongly associate primates with rainforest environments, right? And that's true for a lot of them, but there are a number of very interesting grasslands dwelling species out there that we're gonna get into today. Now, before we do that, though, since this is the first time we've discussed primates as the main topic of an episode, to break out of your very obvious bias for things like rodents and birds, I think we should do just a little bit of an overview of primates.
Oh.
In the form of some trivia for you guys.
Oh god.
Yay.
Yes.
Let's go. My goal is to destroy Nicole.
Yeah.
You will. It's
As it should be. So, and listener, feel free to chime in. You probably do know more about primates than someone who actively despises them. So let's find out. Okay, how many primate species do you think are in this planet?
The entire planet?
How many do you think live on planet Earth? I'll take an answer within the nearest 50.
Oh, that's
27.
Okay.
within the nearest 50?
Within the nearest 50.
Okay, that makes me think there's not very many.
It means there's more than 50. Unless you interpret it like Rachel did.
I guess the first 50 is my guess.
Yeah, I'm
50
gonna
or
go more than that.
Wait, what things are primates? I'm trying to think.
A lot.
Like marmosets obviously are primates.
I'm gonna go 200.
Are lemurs primates?
200 is closer.
What?
Um,
100.
the question
Change my
you're
answer.
both low. There's at least 378.
Okay.
Whoa.
Okay.
Okay.
There could be as many depending on lumping, splitting kind of issues. There could be as many as 500. And when you incorporate subspecies, there is more than 700. Okay, so they're a pretty large and diverse family. Rachel has her hand raised. What is it, Rachel?
I would like to know if lemurs are primates.
That is a great question. And yes, they are, which brings us
Okay.
to our second question here.
No.
Is that this family? Okay, or rather the order. The order primates, it's divided into two big chunks, right?
Okay.
Okay, you've got what are called strepsirrhine, and you have haplorrhine primates. Do you know what anatomical feature that division is made on?
Thumbs.
It's a great guess.
I was gonna guess, something with feet, but
Okay, it would probably be easier if you were looking at the word, but the rhine or rhine part of it, R-H-I-N-E.
Nose.
The noses, yeah. So they divide into the wet-nosed and the dry-nosed primates.
this is why I don't like primates.
Right? So
What?
Yeah, so
Disgusting.
You talked about crayfish noses for a while.
But they're cute.
Oh, God.
okay, so yeah, you've got wet-nosed and dry-nosed or simple-nosed primates.
Did you say simple-nosed?
Yeah, haplorrhine, like haploid.
They have half a nose.
It just means simple, right? So like a strepsirrhine primate, has a snout that ends in like a rhinarium. Okay, so like a dog or a cat has that little wet, moist part that they boop you with.
You really got to use simple words, man. I don't know. Okay, I appreciate you then explaining afterwards.
We're doing a little vocabulary. It's
Yes,
okay.
it's good.
But yeah, so you have some primates have snoots like a dog or a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a
Snoots.
rhinostine?
That would be the strepsirrhine, the wet-nosed ones. So those are that would include lemurs, okay, of which there are many. If you can kind of picture a lemur, you can see it does have kind of a little dog
They have a
nose.
snout, yeah.
Little snoot. The other ones would be just simple nose, which are typically
Us.
us, right? Would be a good example. Okay, we don't have anything weird going on nose wise.
What was that word you used that was like rhinocline or something like that?
Rhinocline?
I've already forgotten what it was. My ADHD is out of control this week, man.
You're doing great. And there's another nose question that's coming up here. So
Wait, tell me the word.
So you've got strepsirrhine and haplorrhine.
Those are groups, yeah. What's the name of the snout chamber?
Rhinarium.
Rhinarium. I don't like that. It sounds like a greenhouse inside your nose.
It does. And there kind of
it
is
is,
a
though.
greenhouse inside your nose.
No.
There's a lot of, moisture and... All right. So you could divide those haplorhine primates into two further groups, also based on nose stuff. You get catarrhine and platyrrhine. Okay.
Oh, no.
This would be the catarrhines have nostrils that point downward. The platyrrhines have nostrils that point outwards.
Disgusting.
I just find this fascinating. This is how, of all the things there are to observe about primates, this is the main thing that we're dividing them up based on, is the nose. So like a tamarin, okay, would have nostrils that go boop out. A human would have nostrils that point down, obviously. Yes, Rachel.
First of all, I don't think I've ever looked at a primate's nose and wondered which way their nostrils were pointing. Second of all, I forgot what I was going to say.
That is okay. So let's dispense with some of the scientific terminology here, because you can divide a number of these primates into two even smaller divisions. Okay.
Oh, I remember what I was going to ask.
What were you gonna ask?
Have these divisions been backed up by DNA?
Ooh.
Oh, by
DNA
genetic
analyses.
phylogeny, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. You know what? Yeah, and that's why there is a lot of confusion in terms of how many primate species there are. Why is it between 370 to 500, right? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
confusion, and that confusion is not isolated to any one primate group. It seems like this happens all over the place with these animals, including in the ones that we're going to very specifically talk about today.
Okay.
We're not there yet, though. Okay, so we're going to divide this into New World and Old World monkeys. You probably heard about these back in biology class, right?
Yeah.
These are two big groups. Okay, Could you give me an example of a New World and an Old World monkey?
Spider monkeys are a New World monkey.
Spider monkeys are a New World monkey. Very good. And Nicole, do you know of an Old World monkey?
You can do it, man. I believe in you.
I can only think of apes.
I mean, they're more closely related to Old World monkeys, but
Ooh, I have an idea.
ooh, what do you got, Rachel?
Wait, are we supposed to let Nicole try?
Well, you
No,
did say you
please
wanted
go.
to destroy Nicole, so
Lemurs.
lemurs.
They're not a monkey.
They're
I'm struggling
they're
with.
a more primitive primate. They're
Okay,
in that.
okay.
They're yeah.
Howler monkeys.
Howler
Nope,
monkeys.
those are
would-
in South America.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Wow.
something
I
from
can't think
Africa.
of a single monkey from Africa.
I know. I just went to the Bone Museum too, and there were so
Aw.
many primates there that I looked at, and
How
I was
about
like, oh.
what was
Oh,
Rafiki?
there's some Asian ones.
Are they monkeys?
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of what they're called.
Guys, this is why we had to talk about primates on the podcast. Okay.
You are proving your point really well, Alan.
Or what about mandrakes? Are they monkeys?
Mandrakes, that is
Mandrills.
Mandrills. Yes,
is a
mandrills.
mandrake?
Mandrills would be an example of an Old World monkey. Yes, very good.
What is a mandrake?
Isn't a mandrake like a
Plant?
Or is it like a mythological thing?
You're right. You're right.
I feel like that feels like an alchemical ingredient or something. I don't know. Okay.
I know more about monkeys than you do.
Okay. Now, so we have a picture in our head of a Old World monkey would be like a mandrill, for example. A New World monkey would be something like a spider monkey. So, what features, like what's a feature that each of those monkeys have that the other one doesn't? You think?
Mandrills
Have big noses.
have really
That's
big
all I
noses.
got.
They do have they do. No, that's a good answer. They have big noses, big teeth. Okay, yeah,
And
absolutely.
they don't do as much climbing.
They
And
have
their
big,
tails aren't prehensile.
Very good.
they
All
have
right.
big butts.
They do have
Nicole, I
big butts
already won.
also. No, those are terrific answers. Okay.
My answer was better.
So Rachel mentioned New World monkeys, tend to have prehensile tails that obviously help them with moving through jungles and thickly forested areas that you're going to find where monkeys live in South America. Nicole, you are correct that Old World monkeys have something going on with their butts. You have your hand raised very high. Go ahead.
Rachel's flipping me off.
That's okay. She's just getting in the spirit of this game. Okay.
Wow.
So they have Old World monkeys. A lot of them have something called an ischial callosity, which is a fancy way of saying like a butt pad. Okay, so they have like a rough
Ischial
callosity, like a callus,
Callosity.
Yes,
Not a colonoscopy.
not a colonoscopy. No, we're gonna stop doing vocab words here very soon.
No, don't. I've already forgotten the word we just learned.
Ischial
Ischial-
callosities. Yeah.
Ischial callosities.
And it's a butt pad. It's a butt pad for sitting on, like the ground.
We have a butt pad.
We have a butt pad, yeah. Our gluteus maximus.
Is that the same thing?
I think ours is more like a fatty butt pad.
Yeah.
These animals have like an actual like rough patch of skin on their bums.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, we also think about like, yes, a lot of them do get massive genital swellings, which we associate a lot with primates. When we think of like, oh, wow, they have, a massive like beach ball sized,
Butt.
swelling coming out of their rump. Yeah. What's also kind of interesting, and this is, we'll talk about this in a minute, but the genital swellings are so intense that they can actually increase the mass of some of these animals by like 15%.
Are you kidding?
It's wild, right?
Because it's filled with fluid that like gives it actual mass.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
And,
like
like-
it's like they so
know
Nicole's
why I
just
thought it was,
shaking
like,
her head
air.
at all of this. This is interesting to me.
Disgusting.
So if you had an 80-pound monkey, okay, that means that's like 13 pounds of extra genital that they're getting when they're in estrus. Like that's wild. Yeah.
Disgusting.
Wow.
It's fascinating to me. Okay. Moving on. So yes, you guys have a good differentiation between New World and Old World monkeys. Obviously, the New World monkeys live in South America, and there are actually none of them that inhabit grasslands. And among that whole group,
Okay.
the grassland dwelling monkeys are in the old world, and not a huge number of them actually show a specific affinity for grasslands, but the ones that do are very, very well adapted to grasslands.
Interesting.
Yes. Also,
Are mandrills one of those?
mandrills tend to be more. I think they use a number of different habitats, but mandrills tend to be more of a forest dwelling monkey.
Ooh.
A forest or savanna?
Well, so a lot of these monkeys use what we'd call a mosaic, right, of habitats. They're not necessarily confined to one.
Okay.
Yes, there is one thing I did want to say, and that's before we move on, since you brought up spider monkeys, because I looked this up. This is just more of a personal rant before we move on, and we could put the trivia away. Donkey Kong.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm ready.
In the Donkey Kong video games, they are a family. They are related. Okay. Donkey Kong, very famously a gorilla. Okay. His nephew, Diddy Kong, small, has prehensile tail. He is, in canon, a spider monkey.
Yeah.
This gorilla has a nephew that's a spider monkey, Dixie Kong, Diddy Kong's girlfriend, chimpanzee.
Yeah.
Maybe he's adopted.
Yeah.
Aww.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Okay, so I would like to tell you a little bit today about a group of monkeys, one genus of monkeys that are specifically like savanna dwelling, right? We talked a lot about the African savanna a few episodes ago, and so we're going to dive in a little bit deeper with some of the things that live there. Rachel is excited. Okay.
Somebody has to bring some excitement here.
So there are a number of, in Africa, there's a number of ground-dwelling species that would call the best biome home. Some of these would include things like vervets. Anyone? Vervets?
No idea.
Sometimes they're called green monkeys.
Do they have like little manes?
Kind of, yeah. They've got they have like a fuzzy kind of wreath. Their face is kind of surrounded by like a fuzzy, disc. You also got geladas, which live up in the montane grasslands of Ethiopia. You've got patas monkeys, okay, which are really long-limbed, really spindly. The way Nicole is like retching as I'm describing what these monkeys look like. Patas monkeys, very interesting. Possibly, just as a side fact, possibly considered one of the inspirations for the Lorax based on their appearance and their symbiosis with gum acacia trees. Yeah. And finally, we've got baboons, which is what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to talk mostly about baboons. Do you guys know anything about baboons already?
I think everything that I once knew about baboons has been replaced by bonobos. And I'm now trying to conflate them in ways that I know are not true.
Ooh, bonobos are, that's another great animal.
Yeah, they're very, very different. They're very chimpanzee-like.
Very different, yes. They're
really aggressive?
Bonobos? Or
no,
baboons? Baboons, yes. Baboons tend to be very aggressive. That's an important feature of their survival. Okay, if we think about... this is a primate that uses a variety of habitats, but primarily on the grassland. You're going to have some very different pressures working on you, right? If you are, trying to survive in a savanna environment, the pressures are different. So the behaviors and the morphology become different about these monkeys. There's a lot about baboons that actually separates them from other non-human primates. Okay. So the main source for this episode is going to talk about baboons and how some of the morphological, behavioral, social innovations that baboons show us living on a grassland or in a more complicated, mosaic of habitats in the African savanna. This article is also going to connect this because this is the main reason I settled on baboons to talk about, is going to connect this a little bit with some of our own evolutionary history. Okay, because obviously the African savanna, primates on the African savanna, that is where humans began, right? So like, we talk about our own, our own ancestry as a species traces back to these same grasslands, these same kind of environments. So baboons are a good potential analog for talking about some of, not like our immediate human ancestors. For those, like chimpanzees might be a better analog, but some of the older ones, okay, going back to like Australopithecus, Ardipithecus, that kind of era of human evolution is what or hominid evolution is what we're looking at.
Okay.
This comes from a paper published just a few months ago called Baboon Perspectives on the Ecology and Behavior of Early Human Ancestors. This was written by Glenn E. King, PhD out of Monmouth University. And so we're going to get into, and this is a person who is an anthropologist by training, but has studied baboons extensively almost their entire career.
Okay.
So published a lot about this. And this is kind of a literature review of how we can look at baboons and their ecology in a grassland environment for understanding how our human ancestors might have functioned in the same kind of environment.
Oh, let's go. This is cool stuff.
Okay.
You still think it's disgusting, Nicole?
I mean, it's not like I like humans that much either, so.
Nicole, you are a primate.
I know.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Is it your greatest flaw?
It is. It really is.
Oh, I'm sorry you're not a rodent. All right, so let's think about why use baboons in the first place. Like, obviously, like I said, there are better analogs for understanding current humans, Homo sapiens, because our most closely related relatives would be chimpanzees and bonobos. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they provide a better framework for understanding like how did we more recently evolve. Baboons would be a better analogy for these human ancestors that would have popped up, 6 to 12 million years ago. Okay.
Does it have to do with like habitat use?
It has to do. Habitat use is part of it, right? So that's one reason why that the framework makes sense, or why the comparison makes sense, is because both our early human ancestors and baboons use a huge variety of habitats, right? So they're not just confined to grasslands or forests or riparian areas. They utilize all of it, and baboons are very widespread in Africa. Like, they have moved across huge swaths of the continent. It also has to do with the way their bodies are. So both are very large bodied among primates. Baboons get pretty hefty, in that range of like 30 to 80 pounds, which is pretty big for a monkey.
Okay. Yeah.
They also have some really stark sexual dimorphism. So you've got male baboons being almost twice as large as female baboons, which is not the case with a lot of other primates. Obviously, it's not the case with humans. It's not the case with chimpanzees either. But it would be the case with some of our earlier human ancestors. Australopithecus would have had a more stark sexual dimorphism, males much larger than the females.
Okay. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I read this paper. I would have assumed they were more. It was similar to humans, but
right. Yeah.
Nope, it's quite a bit different. Another reason this framework makes sense is because baboons are not exclusively a terrestrial species. They do also use the trees, okay, which is what our earliest human ancestors, early hominids, would have done as well, right? So kind of splitting your time between being in the trees and being a fully ground-based species. Those reasons are why this framework makes a lot of sense, why we can draw these comparisons. So let's dive into the world of baboons and understand a little bit more about their morphology, their ecology, and the way they organize.
So I just was picturing labor movements or something.
You know what? It is probably the earliest precursor to the labor movement is the way primates
Incredible.
collectively organize.
Let's go.
Okay, so baboons, more so than many other primates, are very strongly affiliated with this savanna habitat, with this savanna environment. So much so that 4 of the 6 species of baboons are just often collectively called the savanna baboon.
What? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the yellow, the guinea, the chacma, and the olive baboons are collectively just known as savanna baboons.
Holy cow. Also, Nicole and I just had a moment where we locked eyes in deep confusion as we realized that there's not just one baboon species.
Yeah.
There is not. Yeah, with some of these genus or genera of monkeys, there is only like one species. They're like monotypic, right? So geladas are in their own little genus. Mandrills are in their own genus. But there are 6 different kinds of baboon. But even that is kind of a little bit muddied because you have these 6 species of baboons that live in different geographic areas of sub-Saharan Africa, but they all have like these kind of zones of hybridization where their ranges overlap, which it makes it very confusing when you're trying to like pick out which species is which.
Yeah.
So some of them are very different though. Like the Hamadryas baboon lives in more of like a montane environment. They're like more cliff dwelling than savanna dwelling. So, there's some where we can be like, oh yeah, that's a very different situation. Their society is also very different than the other baboon species. So, but for some of them, it's a little more, it's a little muddier. So they're just kind of generally termed as savanna baboons. Baboons are largely ground dwelling during the day. They will sleep in trees. Okay, they will use trees as a refuge, as an escape, but during the day, they are mostly foraging on the ground. And for that reason, they're morphologically much better adapted than a lot of other primates for using the ground, or for using a terrestrial environment.
Okay.
They have longer forelimbs than hind limbs. Those hind limbs in primates are usually used for like suspending themselves in trees, okay, and for climbing trees quickly. Okay. It's very helpful to have really powerful, grabby feet on your back legs to help scoot up a tree, right? Baboons don't rely on that as heavily. They use those longer forelimbs to kind of for bounding across a more open environment.
Okay.
What's kind of interesting here is that they are also, I told you there's a lot of ways in which baboons differ from most other non-human primates. Baboons are also one of the most omnivorous of all primate species.
Okay.
They're using a variety of habitats. They also have a variety of pressures on them. So they have seemed to have evolved to have a really broad diet. And this is something that's interesting about them being a grassland species is the degree to which grass is a part of their diet.
Really?
Yeah, you wouldn't,
Interesting.
We don't typically think of, and if you look at a baboon, right, you look at their teeth, massive canine teeth,
Yeah.
huge jaws. They don't really seem like something that would be grazing on grass quite a bit. But it's, the extent to which they do is fascinating. It can be the single most important food source. Those C4 grasses on a savanna can be the single most important food source for some species of baboons. It may make up, depending on seasonality, anywhere from 40 to 90% of their diet.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
90%.
Right? Yeah, that's really kind of shocking.
Yeah.
To consider like how much actual grazing that they're doing. They're also like a really big generalist species, right? So, they're really good at exploiting this very diverse habitat that they're in. One study that looked at the diets of yellow baboons found that, hang on, I want to make sure I get this right because this is interesting. It may be interesting to you as well. Okay, so of the 25 most common tree genera, all of those were used for food by baboons. Of the 50 most common grass, shrub, and herb species, 93% of them were used. And they were eating anywhere from 1 to 6 different parts of plants from more than 180 species of plant. So baboons have a really broad diet. They're not just eating the leaves of grass, the seeds of grass. They're also utilizing the stems. They're also digging up rhizomes and feeding on those, in addition to all the other things they're eating, like fruits, invertebrates. They even have been known to fish. Okay, baboons have been observed eating both dead fish, diving to find fish, and fishing by slapping the surface of water to stun fish. So they, that's a part of their diet as well. And they'll even eat some other smaller vertebrate prey that they can get a hold of.
Oh my God, that's really cool, diving after a fish.
Yeah.
That's incredible, the amount of generalism that they're showing there. See, Nicole, that's pretty cool.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
We're not
so
going to win
unimpressed.
Nicole over. It's
No,
okay, Rachel.
yeah, we'll give up.
But
on her.
you know, we're going to talk about this anyway.
Open your mouth. Here comes the airplane.
Oh my god.
It's more baboon
gosh.
facts.
So that, you know, that kind of efficiency in using your environment and taking in a number of, you know, sources of proteins, okay, may have helped kind of shape a little bit the evolution of early hominids as well, because they would have had to, right? You're moving into an environment with some more intense seasonality, greater exposure to the elements. It's an open environment where you're going to have to travel a lot farther to find resources sometimes. So that kind of informs us a little bit about what the diet of early hominids may have been like as well. Would have had to have really broadened their horizons to find the most profitable sources of food, since they're not just, you know, chilling back in the forest and, you know, using what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. This
Yes.
is just more of a poll to make sure we're on the same page here. But when we describe animals as being more omnivorous, in my mind, that means that they're eating like a pretty equal proportion of meat and vegetable material. Does that feel accurate?
Well, yeah, it again, it depends. So like they, I think when I'm saying more omnivorous in this context, I think I'm using like most generalist or most opportunistic.
Okay.
You know, like it not in terms of a balance of overall diet, but in terms of the sheer variety of food sources that they will utilize.
Yeah. I like the comparison to opportunist. That's, yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Like if they had access in a certain time of year to a lot of dead fish, they would just eat all of that. And
Exactly.
if they had grasses, then chomp chomp.
Even a deer will eat a bird.
That's true.
Okay.
Do you think a bird would definitely eat a deer?
Yeah, some birds do eat deer, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Okay. Don't try to make this about birds.
Yeah.
You started it, Allan.
You're right. Okay, that's my fault. Okay. Talking about obviously, you know, the way they utilize their environment is one thing. The way they interact with potential threats in that environment is another. Okay, so when we're talking about their predators, what do you think is the biggest or most common predator of the baboon?
Humans.
Silverback gorillas.
You guys came roaring out with those two answers. And okay,
other
Bigger baboons.
humans are okay. These are good answers.
Big mean primates.
You said those were good answers, like they weren't the right ones. So
No,
we
those are
kept
good
going.
answers. Those are good answers. So
Lions.
humans do hunt baboons.
Giraffes.
Okay. Giraffes, not so much, I don't think. Sometimes there are conflicts between species of baboons, okay? And according to one study that studied both collared baboons and collared vervets and collared leopards, the leopards were like by far the most common thing that was going after baboons. Yes.
Were those, is collared the species name, or do they have collars on?
No, a good point of clarification. No, these were just leopards that had collars on.
Okay, cool.
Yes,
Just checking.
much like Donkey Kong wears a tie.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, collared baboon, sure. That makes sense.
does,
Yeah, and then
okay.
you kept going. I was like, oh wait, no.
That's a good point. No. That is not one of the species of baboon. Okay.
Darn.
Sorry. Oh, that's the deal breaker?
Yeah, that would have made it for me.
Don't lie. Keep going, Allan.
Okay, leopards are the most common predator of baboons. They tend to strike at baboons in the nighttime because baboons are unfortunately a little bit too heavy to like sleep way out on the flexible parts of branches where a leopard might have trouble getting to them, because leopard starts to go out a little bit, the branch starts to get a little too thin, a little too light, that it's like problems for the leopard. Other smaller monkeys are able to do that, so they're less vulnerable at night, more vulnerable during the day. Baboons in contrast, much less vulnerable during the day because they are so aggressive. You can find all sorts of fascinating nature doc footage on YouTube of baboons like chasing away lions, which they're much smaller than, but in terms of like the sheer numbers that they have, all of them yelling, sort of like vocalizing, coordinating to like scare off a large predator. It's pretty fascinating. So they'll go out of their way to attack predators and counter like preemptively to avoid, getting attacked. That's during the day.
Okay. Do they ever, when they get attacked in their sleep, do they ever wake up with such ferocity that they just murder the offending leopard? Or
I don't know. That's a great question. I would
I'm just wondering.
yeah, I don't know. As like there are like again, some baboons get up to like 80 pounds, right? Which is big, and they're very angry and very toothy. Like their incisors are like, a few inches long. So I'd imagine if a baboon was fighting for its life, it could probably wound any number of, mid-sized predators. But I don't know. Don't wake up a sleeping baboon.
Okay.
Would be my suggestion to you.
Yeah. You heard it, listeners, here first.
It's a PSA. Baboons are also there's some interesting studies that have been looked into how baboons manage predators in the water as well. Looking at crocodile as a predator.
Crocodile. I was like, what water predators could they possibly be running into?
So a lot of them do exist near water and bodies of water in their habitats. They are extremely vigilant when crossing water, according to the paper, and they have a whole pattern of alarm calls and responses that they use. They're extremely like hyper aware of what's going on in their groups to make sure that none of them are, exposed to a potential crocodile threat. They also have a specific crocodile bark that indicates when it's time to dash into a tree. Similarly, non-human ancestors would have, or early hominins would have also dealt with these kinds of predators as well. They would have dealt with sort of ancestral earlier species of cats, as well as hyenas, lions, things like that. So yes, they would have also needed to probably have a similar sort of vigilance, or even there's anthropological evidence that crocodiles would occasionally feed on them, so they would have needed to develop this similar sort of hypervigilant or coordinated system of defense, a communal sort of defense from these kinds of threats, because you are much more exposed in a grassland environment.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, moving on to the next two things we're going to talk about, which are probably the most interesting aspects of primate biology, which is the social aspect and the cognitive aspect, right? These are what fascinate me personally about primates, and so we're gonna dig into a little bit of their social organization.
Perfect. Nicole also really likes this topic, so maybe we can finally get her to have some level of appreciation for these animals.
Yes. Hopefully. Okay. What would you? How many baboons would you expect to find in a group? What size group do you think they exist in?
15, 30.
You're close to the low end there. So yeah, most baboon species would formulate groups of anywhere from 20 to 50 individuals.
Okay.
A group of baboons is called a troop.
Nice.
And troops of baboons can actually vary anywhere from 1 to 200 in size. So this is a large community of animals that we're talking about. What's interesting about groups of baboons is that they will organize hierarchically. So you have the large troop, and then nested within that, you have smaller groups that interact and split off, and then smaller groups within those.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because the terms are a little bit different from species to species. I don't know why this is the case, but if you're someone who studies like Guinea baboons, for example, the hierarchy would, at the lowest level, you'd have the individual, okay? Then you'd have the reproductive unit, which is typically a one male unit, and then any females that are associated with that male. Then you would have the party, which is multiple one male units. Then you'd have the gang, and then you'd finally have the troop as the highest level.
Okay.
Why do they use these terms? I don't know, but it makes sense to like sort of differentiate, because these groups they'll split off and they'll come together when they need to. They might split off if resources are low and they have to forage separately, but they might come together for things like, again, community defense and stuff like that.
How much space is a troop of baboons occupying? Like, that seems like an extraordinary number of these like big grazing animals wandering around. Like, how far away do they roam from each other? Like, do they have a territory that they're occupying, or are they nomadic? Like, how much space do they take up?
And in terms of like physical space, that could vary pretty greatly. I found one study that was looking at like what they call the day path of a baboon or a baboon group, and how far they travel. I don't remember the specific numbers there, but they can, especially when they're in a grassland environment, and if resources are low, then they end up spreading out quite a bit. They travel very, very far in certain circumstances throughout a day. But yeah, I don't know. There's all sorts of large herds of animals though in a savanna,
Right.
It's not just, it's like, 200 baboons seems like a lot, but you've got so many other animals that are also forming very large groups for similar reasons. You know.
And I'm sure they're all overlapping and living in the same spaces, obviously.
Yeah. They are kind of free ranging. They will migrate a little bit, but they do kind of gravitate sometimes towards a territory with like a good feeding ground and a good sleeping ground.
Okay.
But also like, it also depends on, it's a little bit gender based too, because males of a troop of baboons, they'll move from troop to troop, right?
Oh, okay.
It's the males are expected to, like, once they, start reaching that, like a level of maturity, that they get kicked out and they kind of have to go and wander and find another.
Do they age in the grasslands?
Do they age in the grasslands?
For
then
a dozen years and then
return
Yes.
as really grizzled, like just Clint Eastwood types?
Yes, Clint Eastwood type baboons.
yes. Wait, how long do baboons live?
That's a great question.
On average, apparently 20 to 40,
Okay.
which is pretty good considering the crazy
Jaguars.
number of predators that exist on the savanna. But yeah, that's pretty solid. And I think that speaks to how well they defend themselves within these social groups.
Yeah. How often do the babies die?
So
That's a good question. Shut up,
like
Nicole.
what's their infant mortality?
Yeah.
So they're the infant mortality is going to be a lot higher than the adult mortality,
Right.
In general, but also there is a lot of infanticide sometimes with baboons.
Okay.
If you have a lower status male that is trying to butt his way into one of the females in one of these other one male groups, that might result in that offspring getting killed by the dominant male in that group.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
I forgot that aspect.
There's a lot of there's the male competition among baboons can be very intense. That's a key issue with how their societies organize. Again, depending on the species, but there can be some very intense, very violent confrontations among male baboons competing for access to females.
Okay.
Interestingly, though, that also varies a little bit. There are some species where that are more conflict averse, right?
Oh, okay.
Like the Kinda baboon, which is the smallest. They don't really have violent confrontations with other males. They're more invested in the male-female relationships that they do have, and they kind of get along with other males, a lot better.
Interesting.
And some species also, the older males get, the more likely they are to be cooperative, because they will start viewing the younger males as more of a threat and realizing that they have to work together to defend what they have.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's interesting the way that those social dynamics play out over the course of these baboons' lives. But that's a key thing that you bring up there.
Do you think that could tell us something about the origin of the Good Old Boys Club?
It really might. And there's, so you've got.
Very proud of myself for that one.
Very good job, Rachel.
She literally just pat herself on the back.
She
I
did
need
just
everyone
pat
to know.
herself on the back. So you've got it's good that you bring that up, because there is, a lot that, we could potentially extrapolate from baboons living in these multi-level societies with like this intense level of social distinction and, intense competition and things like that, that could tell us about what might have early hominid societies been like as well. The anthropological evidence suggests that early hominids also would have banded together in groups of 20 to 50 individuals, depending. Wow. So very similar to a baboon there. And that they would have had a similar situation going on with some of their interaction. So it's kind of postulated that they might have lived in either, or they might have shifted at some point from being in these like multi-male, multi-female groups that were more promiscuous to having more of like a harem kind of structure where one male is kind of associated with multiple females and the females that are associated with that female, since the males get kicked out or killed.
Yeah.
Right? So, and there's one anthropologist cited in the paper named Bernard Chappé, who suggested that kind of harem organization in early hominids may have also given way to the multifamily community, which is kind of the mode that humans organize in, right? Yeah. Another interesting side note on that, since we were talking about male competition, this anthropologist also suggested that humans may have started switching from being in more of a harem situation to monogamy when male competition was made more dangerous by the invention of weapons. So it's like, when you're just like, well, I guess when you're just like throwing hands, it's a different story. But once you have like axes and, knives and stuff, that's like, okay, we don't need to fight about this. Yeah.
This is way more dangerous.
Right. The stakes are much higher now.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Anthropology is interesting.
That's so interesting. Can you speak to any of the anthropological evidence that you're mentioning about, like, how we know the group sizes were so large and how we know there was like a harem sort of organization?
For
like,
sure.
What does that look like? Like, what does that evidence look like?
So to answer that question, if you're looking at one of the papers that was specifically looking at how they're evaluating the social organization or the group sizes of early hominids, they're drawing that information from, quote, theoretical implications of ethnographic and primatological studies. Okay, so that would be like using modern analogs.
Yeah, okay.
Guesses. How dare you? Using modern analogs as a framework for analysis. Okay.
Why not bonobos?
How do we know for sure?
Studies in biological anthropology and population structure. Paleoanthropological data related primarily to skeletal aspects, so actually looking at fossils, and archaeological data, so not just the human fossils, but like evidence of settlements, evidence of shelter, burial sites, things like that. There's also another venue that they utilize within this paper anyway is something called the social brain hypothesis, that looks at what might have been the architecture and the size of the brains of these early hominids and kind of correlating that with, primates of similar brain size and, structure. How would they react in these situations? How would they behave? So it really does, with a lot of paleontology, you do have to rely on modern analogs to help to illuminate some of it. So yeah, that's where some of this information comes from. And that's, that's really kind of what the point of this paper is. At the core of it.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So there's a lot of really strong female relationships with not only other females, but with other males that kind of contribute to the stability of these baboon troops. The female social connections tend to be a main driver of like survivorship of the young in these groups.
Okay.
That's
interesting, actually.
Yeah, there's an interesting like hierarchy of females where like you'll have a dominant female and then her female offspring will be like ranked right underneath her. And like in order of most recent female offspring is like the dominant female beneath her.
Interesting.
So like there's an interesting hierarchy there, and this is like this is an aspect of their cognition that I find really interesting, which is that they have this capacity for making these social distinctions.
Yeah.
So they did some like playback studies where they would play certain calls towards certain baboons that were like a varying kind of like social status within a troop, and it would elicit very different reactions. Like if you're getting yelled at by a like higher status baboon where you're lower status, then they are kind of like there's going to be a lot more aggression there. It's just interesting the way that they distinguish each other socially and seem to recognize their own value and the value of the other baboons in terms of this social hierarchy, which is, again, may have been sort of a precursor to this, human tendency of, comparing yourself to others and, and making these, sort of distinctions.
You said that the female relationships or the strength of female bonds tends to be a better predictor of survivability of the offspring. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's really interesting in particular because I think there's this idea that in species where the males are really aggressive, that's a trait that's directly related to the survival of the offspring, that they're like protectors and that sort of a thing. And so I find it interesting that rather than any male behavior, it's the female relationships in this case that are a better predictor of how well the infants do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because the male aggression also kills the babies. I don't know.
Yeah. Males are just there to like fight other males and like
Right.
cause a ruckus, and ladies are like, calm down, everyone. Like, it's okay.
Yes.
Is it okay to anthropomorphize animals that we are directly relating ourselves to?
In this case, maybe in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that, I think that's part of the point, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
like there is a time where anthropomorphization doesn't make sense, but there is also times when anthropomorphization can be a useful tool for understanding something about ourselves. That was something like I went to hear Jane Goodall speak once, and that was something that she was really big on, which was that like having spent so much of her life with chimpanzees, studying chimpanzees, it's like at a certain point it doesn't make sense to not compare them in some ways to yourself, because it is like a difference of degree, it's not a difference of kind, is something that she said. So
It kind of reminds me of hyena social structure a little bit, like just like the strong female bonds and like the female, her offspring being like directly underneath her a lot of times. And yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's an aspect of mammal ecology that, you have to understand, like males so often in many mammal species are essentially hyper competitive sperm donors. Like they don't actually contribute a lot to it varies quite a bit, but like they don't necessarily invest a lot in the rearing of young or in the protection of offspring. They don't actually contribute a lot to the stability of the population. They just are often fighting with other males and trying to mate. And like that's like, that's kind of an interesting aspect of mammal ecology in general. From the paper specifically, what it says is, quote, females with the strongest social bonds to other adult females have the highest survivorship among both daughters and sons. The males, obviously, male offspring is much more at risk within a family unit or within a troop because of the potential competition aspect, and also the fact that males tend to leave a family unit at some point. The benefits persist into offspring adulthood, are unrelated to female dominance rank, and increase quantitatively with the strength of female-female bonds. So that is really a foundational thing for the stability of the troop.
That's really cool.
It is cool. All right. So we talked a little bit about their social cognition. How do they recognize one another's value, and why do they have that ability? There's also with baboons. Some limited observations of tool use. Not to the extent that they've been observed in chimpanzees. Certainly, I know it's debated, like, are chimpanzees in the Stone Age now? Like, it's like based on their tool use. But like with baboons, there are, among primates, they have a pretty high degree of cognition in terms of exploring and solving novel tasks. So like studies that have like tried to compare, apples to apples, like, okay, how does a macaque and a rhesus monkey compare on these two tasks? Baboons tend to be a lot more successful in terms of these cognitive measures.
I wonder if that's because they're such generalists that they are constantly experiencing new things and figuring out ways to use them, or they're just like, I don't know, it seems like they will use anything around them that can be used, right? So maybe they're just really willing to try over the evolutionary history of their species.
Well, I think so, yeah. I mean, I think in terms of learning, it is something that baboons have a pretty high capacity for. Which is something I'll talk about a little bit more in just a second. But just before we move on from tool use, in terms of what has been observed, baboons have been seen like very selectively picking rocks that they want to flip to find food based on the size, the angle of the rock to a downward slope, what might be easiest to move, and that sort of a thing. And also primatologists have directly observed baboons throwing rocks at them. So, which is kind of, like,
were they okay?
They were fine. Yeah,
okay,
they were
good,
fine.
good,
But
good.
yeah, they like.
I've heard that can be dangerous.
I don't
Humans
know.
have done that to each other too.
Yeah, I don't know what they were there to study in the first place, but then baboons started throwing rocks at them, and they were probably like, fascinating. Let's write this down. This is cool.
Yes. I love scientists. Wait.
Yes.
Are chimpanzees in the Stone Age?
I don't know. That's a question for another time.
Okay. Sorry.
You did just kind of throw that out there, like.
Yeah, I couldn't get out of my head. I had to scratch it.
I mean, yeah, chimpanzees and bonobos are fascinating animals, and I would love to tell you all about them another time, but not in this podcast.
Okay.
You talked about their ability to learn, and having all these kind of new experiences that they're having to constantly process by using so many different habitats and using and traveling so much. That was an interesting thing about language. Okay. In terms of the social learning aspect there. There is an argument, or there's interest in using baboon vocalizations to study the most foundational kind of beginnings of human language.
Okay.
Because baboons have the necessary brain architecture, they have the necessary anatomy to have this variety of vocalizations with different meanings, right? So they might kind of have some of the building blocks of language there. And what's interesting is that there's really complex vocalizations that might a lot like prairie dogs. I feel the need to mention that. Thank you. Because there is, they all these what sound like grunts and hoots and calls and things do indicate very different things to the baboons.
They contain information of some kind. They
contain information, exactly. So there is a lot more meaning than we are able to extract from just hearing them the way they hit our ear. They're able to extract a lot more meaning from those. But interestingly, when new males join a different gang or party, or when you have like this sort of migration between groups, the vocalizations change. Okay, so like they sort of end up with this like vocal, like this, what the paper calls vocal convergence, which is basically like, all these baboons hang out together. They have these intensive social interactions. They're learning from one another. Their vocalizations then begin to get a lot more similar.
So do you mean when a new individual arrives to a troop that they are adapting that troop's like slang or something, or is it like going both ways?
I think it does go both ways. I think, you have you have these you have other baboons coming in and out of a certain group, and then their vocalizations converge to all kind of the same thing. So there's an exchange an exchange of information there, which is it's kind of interesting. So I mean, like, then that is also telling of the way that human language works too, right? Like, we take things and we draw things from, our interactions with other groups of people, and that, that may have been sort of a foundational thing for our languages as well. And it's telling about how maybe the early hominids would have communicated too. It's just interesting, to use this as kind of a lens with which to view the way that these certain things evolved. Something really complicated like language would have just maybe started with, these information laden vocalizations that were different among different groups of hominids, and then the more they got together, the more it refined and converged into something universal. So
that's cool.
It is interesting. Lastly, the bipedal walking. Okay.
Ooh,
that is just another, that's another thing.
Wait,
right. This is a pretty important thing. Obviously early hominins, when did they develop bipedalism? And why? Baboons kind of also maybe give us a little bit of a light on that, because infant baboons will spontaneously walk upright in the early phase of their life, while they're also learning how to coordinate their limbs to walk on all fours. So they will do both, which suggests that like the neural pathways to do either are there in baboons. And have probably been there in other primates as well. And so if baboons had a different set of pressures acting on them, then they might have evolved a little bit differently in terms of the way they move as early hominids did, because there's a similar architecture in some of these ancestral primates to do either, it seems like.
Oh, that's cool.
Because as adults, they are primarily not bipedal.
Correct. Yeah. But as babies, they'll walk upright spontaneously. Yeah. Which is interesting.
Do they ever do that as adults?
They will. They just don't move as efficiently when they're fully grown, I don't think. Like you can, like they'll stand up.
Sure.
But in terms of like using it as their primary form of locomotion, like the primary movement, it doesn't really seem like it makes as much sense. But it's something that is primarily observed when they're babies, which I think is interesting. So,
that's really interesting.
Okay, so what does all this mean? Baboons, like early hominid species, are very well adapted to function in the environment that the African savanna offers. They have so many challenges to face in this very complex environment, this mosaic of environments, but they are just really well built for all of these potential struggles, right? When I saw this paper, that's what really interested me, because grasslands and the African savanna in particular play a significant role in the evolution of human species. It is part of our story, and not just to look at baboons and see what that tells us about not only other non-human primates, but also our own ancestors is an interesting subject. And it's I mean, I know we don't, we talk a lot about wildlife. We don't really talk too much about anthropology on this podcast, but it is just something that I think is it's a fascinating area to see where the two overlap. And
I think it's good to go back to our roots, and I don't know. I mean, there's like a lot of hypotheses even now of like why humans find park style environments so appealing, and it all goes back to this like ancient, very ancient relationship with savannas that hominids have had. So
for sure, I mean, there's there's something. It is interesting to think about, how much of our own social inclinations and our own habits and that sort of a thing are derived traits essentially from these more ancestral human species. What does that leave us with? It is interesting. But also baboons are just really cool animals.
They are cool.
They in terms of primates that fully live on savannas and do it really well. It's kind of cool. Like there's being a true grasslands primate, it's a fun subject, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, we talk all the time about how humans are impacting environments. It's nice for a change to think about how an environment impacted us.
Yeah, right? That's true.
And impacts baboons.
Yeah.
To this day.
We can't eat as much grass as they can.
Yeah. Do they have a gut thing going on like cows? Do they like cows?
So I really wanted to look into that because humans obviously our cecum
is vestigial.
Yeah, is very shrunk down and we've got a crappy little appendix that serves no purpose to give us problems, right?
Yeah.
But I think in other primates that's much larger because they have a much more rough and unpalatable. Well, I won't say unpalatable. Maybe the baboons think it's delicious.
Less palatable.
Less palatable. A rougher diet.
Yeah.
I would think they'd have to have some stomach adaptations that allow them to deal with that because that's breaking down all that cellulose. If that's 90% of your diet, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't get into that aspect of their anatomy, but
it
has to be the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do baby baboons eat their mother's poop so that they can better break down cellulose?
That's gross. And that's what are they, rabbits?
A lot of animals do it.
No, I know. I actually don't know about. I didn't look into fecal pap or anything like that with baboons.
Okay.
Well, why not? Just kidding.
These are the questions we want to know.
That's the question you want to know. No, I don't have. I mean, there's. I didn't want to do just a species profile on baboons. I wanted to look at it from a more specific angle. So
I like that.
But yeah.
Can we end this episode by getting Nicole's final thoughts on baboons?
I think that would be a great idea. Nicole, does any of this information move you in any way?
Thanks for listening. The best biome. Okay, that was a funny gag.
You don't have to give an earnest answer if you don't want to. Read the outro.
No. Instead of an earnest answer, give us a snarky answer.
I mean, I thought that was pretty snarky.
Yeah,
just reading the outro instead of answering. I thought that was pretty good. No, I mean they're cool. I don't know. I just don't like primates. I don't know why. I can't.
Is it Uncanny Valley related or?
But baboons don't look like people.
No, but you know what I mean, where it's sometimes it's a little bit too similar, and that's what wigs you out.
Yeah.
You did say you hated marmoset hands. Why are you looking at me like that? That's what you said.
I mean, I've said I hate a lot of primate hands, but I don't know that I specifically said I hated marmoset hands.
Have you ever looked at a ring-tailed lemur's hands?
No, I don't want to.
When they're when they're on the ground, they have their hands. They look like little tarantulas. It's cool.
Wow.
Oh God. Right, yeah, I don't know what it is. They're just not that interesting. Yeah, maybe it's just because everybody else likes them, and so it makes me not like them.
Oh my God.
You're like an edgelord at heart, and you just have to like
only
all the
about
cool
primates.
Things.
Yeah.
I'm sending you.
Don't send me monkey pictures.
Everybody tweet Nicole monkey pictures. She runs our Twitter, so it'll go right to her inbox.
Yeah, find the comments and go ahead and send Nicole.
I'll block all of you.
No, that's
from our professional Twitter. Yeah, this is your fault.
You're not in charge of our Twitter account anymore.
I sent you a very grouchy-looking Hamadryas baboon that's going to stare through your soul.
Thanks for listening. The Best Biome is produced through our nonprofit Grassland Groupies, dedicated to inspiring the conservation of grasslands. In the show notes, you can find our website, phone number, and social media accounts. Text, call, or tweet your suggestions. Fan mail or hate mail. We got our first hate mail. I meant to say that last time.
That was pretty exciting.
It was really fun.
She thought we were in league with millionaires and that we were like a front for like George Soros or something. It was really fascinating.
And that we were buying up grasslands to destroy them. And I'm like, that's the opposite of what we're trying to do, and also we don't have that much money. So
shout out to you, Jennifer. I wish we had that amount of power.
I will say to any millionaires listening, though, if you are interested in buying grasslands up and restoring them, give us a call.
If you enjoyed the show and want to support us, tell your friends about us, or leave us a review. We couldn't do this without your support, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.